So happy that you all could join us today for our programming. My name is Jacqueline Tilton. I'm an assistant professor in the management department and the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee in the Walker College of Business. The programming that we have here today, our shared reading book discussion, is one of many initiatives that we have to support and enrich our community. In an era of banned books, we believe now more than ever in reading challenging material that might make you uncomfortable and might make you think. And also in a time when diversity, equity, and inclusion is under fire, I want to make a few things known for our students in our community. So first, for our queer community, we want you here and you matter. Our Black and white community, Hispanic, Asians, and all races and ethnicities, we want you here and you matter. Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, atheists, agnostics, we want you here and you matter. Neurodivergent and neurotypical, disabled and able-bodied, we want you here and you matter. Traditional and non-traditional students, veterans and transfer students, we want you here and you matter. Republicans, Democrats, independents, and all others, we want you here and you matter. We believe that together we are better as a community. If you ever feel otherwise, you can always talk to the members of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Again, Jacqueline Tilton, Tilton JD at App State. And I want to make a few special thank yous here today. So first to our dean for her unwavering support of our diversity, equity, and inclusion, including supporting the programming here today. I want to thank Marty Mesner for his continued support, the members of our DEI committee, and of course our panelists that have taken time out of their busy schedules to join us today and share their thoughts. And lastly, I want to thank the person who nearly single-handedly planned and executed this event, Meredith Pipes. I'll pass it over to her. This programming wouldn't be here without her.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you for those words. Those are really needed. So I'm Meredith Church Pipes. I'm the Global and Civic Engagement Specialist for the College of Business, and also work with our DEI committee and, of course, shared reading. So I'm going to just give a little preempt to this event so you can understand the structure a little bit. We tried to arrange these chairs in even more of a circle, but found the stage slightly narrow to do so. But this is going to be a little different from the normal book discussion you might go to in a book club or a panel discussion. So we're actually hoping, in our ideal world, that our invited guests will be able to sit here and completely forget about this audience and just have a conversation amongst themselves about their own journeys as immigrants to the U.S., so that we can listen in and hear what that experience is like just candidly. Of course, it is inspired by our shared reading book, which is Dear America, Notes of an Undocumented Citizen, which is the memoir of Jose Antonio Vargas. And he is Filipino. He came to the U.S. as an older child, but didn't realize he was undocumented until he tried to get his driver's license and realized he did not have the paperwork he needed to be a citizen here. So he had to kind of make a choice. He had a life, he was a successful student, he had dreams, and he decided, I'm just going to pass as a citizen. I'm going to earn that citizenship by being outstanding. And he really was. He has an incredible career as a journalist. But after a while, the pressure of having this aspect of his life be a secret was just too much, and he decided to come out publicly, publishing an article in the New York Times that he was undocumented, and that kind of changed the whole trajectory of his life. He wrote this book, he's done documentaries, he's started an organization to support advocacy of immigrants, and so it's a really interesting story. It's a great read. I know a lot of you were already part of the shared reading for the College of Business and have read the book or read parts of the book, but we do have additional copies if you're interested after this talk, and you can just sign up on the way out. So just a couple things to mention. So Jose Antonio Vargas' story is very outstanding in many ways, but in one way that it is not is that there are many undocumented individuals in the U.S., estimated to be around 11 million. We don't know exactly. And part of the issue that we deal with immigration is the whole idea of how to come legally. And so it's good to keep in mind a few statistics or numbers. One is just to know how many people are on the wait list. So right now, as of November of last year, there were 4.1 million people waiting to come legally to the U.S. Some of the people on that list have been waiting for 2 decades. So it's not so easy sometimes. So now I hope that you guys will sit back and appreciate the privilege of listening in on this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and invite our moderator, Carrie Afanador, Site Director for Immigrant Connections in the High Country, to the stage, as well as all of our invited guests. If you would like to come to the stage, please join me in welcoming Carrie Afanador, Sonia de Dardon, Edgar Straube, Yolanda Adams, and Rubi Escobar to the stage. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for having us. So just a few years ago, I was here on App State campus working in the College of Education when I heard about a program that the Department of Justice runs where you can become accredited to practice immigration law without being an attorney. And I thought, oh, that is something that our community needs. So I tried to talk a bunch of people into going through the program. I couldn't talk anybody into it, including my friend Iris here. Tried to talk her into it, my husband, a bunch of people. And finally I decided that I should check it out and see how to get accredited. So I thought I could do it on the side, so I continued to work in the College of Education while getting this accreditation and then starting to see clients. It became too big, and so about a year ago I left my role in the College of Education, and now I work full-time in immigration legal services here in Boone. And so that has been life-changing to understand the complexities of our immigration system and how difficult it is to access, even if you have money, even if you have language or education, but especially if you don't. And so we want to talk a little bit about what that's like, what it's like to try to navigate this very opaque system that changes all of the time, these laws that people mostly don't understand. And then once you do navigate the system, navigating the change of language and culture. And so I'm really excited. These are all people I know who are friends of mine, who've really enriched my life. So I hope that their story also will encourage you and also help you kind of understand the tension that immigrants hold. And so let's get started. I'd love to start just having you introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, a little bit about your journey, what brought you here to the United States, and what you do now. I'm going to call on Yolanda first to start us off.
Sure, thank you, Carrie, and thank you for providing this space where we can talk freely about our immigration journeys. My name is Yolanda Adams, and I am currently the Assistant Director for Student Leadership and Family Outreach for Gear Up. And prior to that, I was working with Guatemalan schools for the past 10 years. In total, I have been here in Boone for 21 years. From Bogota, Colombia, originally. So yeah, I have survived 21 winters, which is pretty impressive. But my journey as an immigrant, it was a little different probably from most of them, even though when I think about the journeys, they're all very different. So actually, I migrated twice to the States. The first time was when I was an 8-year-old, and my mom and I came to the States, specifically to Fort Lauderdale. And we came with a tourist visa. My brothers were already here, living in Florida. So I was able to stay for 6 months, and then I was able to, my mom was able to ask for an extension so I could finish that school year. And after that, you cannot have any other extensions. After that, you actually literally have to leave the country to be able to come back. So at that point, we had the decision to make. Either we could stay here undocumented or go back to my country, because to Colombia because my brother, who was my oldest brother, had married a USA citizen, and there was actually a pathway for us to be able to be documented. So my mom and I decided to go back, and we were there for a few more years. And actually, when my mom's immigration status came I was actually a 17-year-old. And that's when I migrated the second time. And that was a complete shock for me. As an 8-year-old, it was not as bad, and I came as a tourist, but being 17 and knowing that I was going to be here, it was a culture shock. And that's how my pathway started. My mom became a citizen, a resident, and she petitioned me. And then I was lucky enough that I was under 18, because otherwise my wait would have been so much longer, probably like 25 years instead of just a couple years. So that's how actually my journey started here.
Great, thank you. And this is a really common way that people can immigrate is through a family member. And so the government prioritizes family relationships. And so if you have a US citizen spouse or parent or sibling, that is I shouldn't say easy, nothing's easy, but that is one of the more common ways that you can immigrate. Sonia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me. I was born, raised, and have worked my whole life in Guatemala. I have 3 children, all grown up now. My oldest daughter met a young man from North Carolina who was living in Guatemala then. They fell in love, got married, and eventually they come to live here in the United States. My daughter has a 2-year-old boy, and the second was born just this Monday. When my daughter asked us if we would like to come to live in the United States, we accept the offer because be close to our grandchildren and watching them grow up and be part of their lives is what motivates us. So my husband and I accept the offer from my daughter, and she applied. After a year, we got the appointment at the American Embassy in Guatemala, and it was time to quit my job. And my husband, he worked with temporary contracts, so he had no problem. And after less than another year, we got the green card. And we put our house on the market and sold or donate our belongings, and we moved to Boone.
Well, welcome. We're glad you're here. And I think this brings up something very common in immigration as well as just family relationships get pulled apart. Maybe if you're from Statesville, North Carolina, your whole family lives in Statesville. But if you're an immigrant, often you have family members who live all over the world. And so that really changes the dynamic of your family. So I'm glad you can be here with your daughter. Ruby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Rubi Escobar. I have lived in the Boone area my whole entire life. I was actually brought to the U.S. by my parents when I was 1, so I've been here for 24 years. And this is all I basically know. My parents left Mexico to ensure that we had a better quality of life. If it wouldn't have been for that, I wouldn't be here, obviously. And they just wanted to ensure that we had higher education. We don't know if that would have been possible in Mexico. It's more difficult. So they decided to immigrate undocumented. They entered undocumented with me. So I'm a DACA recipient. I applied when I was 15. This was all very new. My parents were like, oh, you have to do it, you have to do it. And I was like, okay. At that time, I didn't really understand what that meant because all my entire life, this is all I knew. So I was like, well, I thought I could get a driver's license. I thought I could go to college. I thought I could even be president, but I can't. So I just applied, and I'm trying to get into nursing school because we need more bilingual nurses. And I'm a Farmworker health coordinator at High Country Community Health, which I hear different stories about how migrant farm workers come, and it's just like putting more in perspective all the sacrifices my parents did in order to be here in front of you guys and helping all these other people. I have 3 younger siblings. My brother's a cop for Boone PD, and my sister's, one of them wants to be a psychologist and the other wants to be a doctor. So that just really shows all the hard work that my parents put in to that it's really, they're seeing fruits of what they came here to do, basically. So thanks.
Thanks so much for sharing with us, Ruby. I appreciate you sharing your story, and I know this is really common in a lot of immigrant families, that there are mixed statuses, that some people were born in the United States and have U.S. citizenship, and some people do not, and there are certain stressors that come with that, and ways of navigating that, and so I think it's not acknowledged enough, the mixed status of many immigrant families, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. Edgar, introduce yourself.
So everybody has a story. I want to start off with that. And when we get to share our stories, we get to know each other better. I'm Edgar Straube. Last name does not let me know who I am. I'm a mutt. If you can think of a Chihuahua and a German Shepherd mix, that's what I would be. My mother, I'm from Guatemala. My father's part of the family is German. Yet, in God's sense of humor, I say, we get to do things that sometimes are out of our control, and something like this. The story that we share is, a lot of it is common. I come with my family, just to let you know, I have the blue books. I can sell them to you guys if you want. My mother was a wetback. She was a mojada. She crossed the border. And because of that, she started picking strawberries in Miami, Florida, in Homestead. Because of that, my mother's work ethic was above reproach. And because of that, I am where I am today. I am Guatemalan. My wife is Colombian. My children are from Miami. And I have 1/3 in from Costa Rica. So we decided to take over the Americas, North, Central, and South. And that's why I carry these with me as a reminder, just to make sure that I'm not deported. A lot of questions. I'm eager to talk to you guys. I'm eager to share a story, because when we share a story, there's more room at the table for all of us.
That's great. Thank you, Edgar. I appreciate that. As I said, all of you have contributed so much to my life, and I'm glad to share this stage with you. And I thought of all of you as I was reading this book, and just his incredible story as well. But I feel like if you haven't read this book, you should. He asks a lot of thoughtful questions that will maybe make you think differently about some ideas of immigration you might have previously held. So I want to ask all of you about this book. I was joking that I was going to make it a quiz and ask everybody quiz questions about it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to ask, is there anything that you can relate to in his story, in Jose Antonio Vargas's story, that relates to your own, or maybe is completely different? And I'll just let whoever wants to go first on that one.
Okay. So one thing I related with him especially was, up until I was 15, I was undocumented. So not being able to get my learner's permit, my parents tried to explain it to me saying, hey, if you go back to Mexico, you won't be able to come back. In the mind of a 6-year-old, that doesn't really make any sense. So they would try to like put it in perspective to where I would understand. Until I was like 12, they were like, you can't, if you go back, you can't come back because you're not a US citizen. So up until I was 12, it was like, oh, I've been here my whole life. I'm just like everybody else. But I wasn't. So I can relate to that, and like not being scared, for one, after I found out. Am I going to tell my classmates, my friends? They would ask me, what? this was pretty funny, and I still laugh to this day. One of my friends asked me if I came in through Ellis Island, because we had learned about that in school, and I was like, no, that's not how it went. I honestly don't know how it went, because I was 1, but it still made me laugh. We were in like 6th grade, so I didn't take offense to that. I'm like, she was just curious. So I can just relate to being scared, not being able to achieve those dreams that you want. At that time, I wanted to be a pediatrician, and I was like, oh, I still debating about that, because with my status, I can't really have the funds to get a higher education. It's just 10 times harder. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can really relate to his story. What about anybody else?
I would say, like, because I have like such a like weird journey that I came in when I remember listening to my brother and my mom trying to make the decision, do we go back? And it would be just my mom and myself back in Colombia. I couldn't quite understand. It's like, I mean, what is the big deal? What can we just say? As an 8-year-old, you don't understand the magnitude of what it is to be undocumented in a country. So when we left, it was kind of like weird, because I was now starting to get used to the school system and everything, and then I have to go back and get it readjusted again to another new school. And then when you think about, I was like in 4th grade, so when I came back, I was 17. So I had built my life back in Colombia. I have all my friends, my group of friends that I'm still in touch with them, and it was the hardest thing. And then I came because my mom's, again, immigration status, she got the green card, but at that point, I came back as a tourist without documentation. And I went into my senior year and then the prospect of college, and I went into college as a out-of-state student, because I was not documented, so we have to pay, of course, more, and I couldn't get my driver's license either. So it was, and I knew it was, everything is going to be like a transition, just the waiting period. And I was in college, and finally, you know, I got the notification that I had the interview with the American embassy, not in Fort Lauderdale. I have to go back to Colombia to get the interview, with the risk, if they will deny it, I would not be able to come back. So it was a nerve-wrack, actually, to tell you the truth. As a 18-year-old, I mean, you're still a child if you're 18. So I remember going with all this stuff. My mom was not able to go with me, so I stayed with some friends, dear friends, and I remember them driving me to the American embassy and dropping me off, because nobody else can go with you. And it was, I went into this bunker, because the American embassy in Colombia is like truly like a bunker with all these checking points and everything. And I remember sitting there, very intimidating, of being in front of these little tiny bitty windows that have windows like this thick, because everything is so protected. And looking at the people there that was going to interview me. It wasn't in a private computer setting like I was in an office. It was like standing like in front of the bank teller, being interviewed, and they ask you all these questions. And I remember I was like a nerve-wrack, and I was like, what about if I answer the wrong question? Is that going to jeopardize? And they asked me all these questions very seriously. They don't have any like connection with you at all. And then they were like, okay, so when you can come back later today and pick up your stuff. And I was like, they don't tell you, yeah, you pass or not. You're going to go ahead and come back in the afternoon and find out what your future is going to be like. And I remember, bringing all my x-rays and all the medical exams that they require, all sealed. You cannot open it. And then I went and picked it up, and well, of course I'm here, so lucky enough I was approved. And traveling to the States, I had to travel with my x-rays and all my exams. And when I got here, they put me in the little room, which is very intimidating. I don't know if you have ever been taken to the little room in the airport, but it's like very intimidating. That's when everything went through. But so I cannot completely relate to exactly what he went, but in a way, in a pathway, I kind of went through something similar.
Thank you for sharing all that. I think one of the commonalities, right, is navigating these systems. Like, you don't realize what you need to get a driver's license or a job or go to college, like you said. And these are all things that are impossible to access if you don't have a status, if you're not documented. So thank you for sharing that. Edgar, did you want to share?
So the plight of an immigrant, you know, it's different for everybody. My wife's family came with legal visas because they're professionals, they were called in. But the plight of an immigrant is always challenging. There's tensions, there's fears. How many of you guys know your social security number by heart? All right, most of you. I had to learn it as a child because for some reason, my mother said, you need to know your social security number. You need to carry this thing called resident alien card in your back pocket all the time. Because if you're stopped, you know. So there's the plight of an immigrant, the fear, the tension, the indifference. It's a lot of resistance. And so coming into a new place, you're not from here, you're not from there. And it creates something beautiful. It creates something called a third culture. My children are third culture because my wife is South American, I'm Central American, and my children were born here. So they become an automatic third culture. They adopted both cultures, which is mom and dad's, and now they've adopted the country of the United States culture. At the same time, we've had to learn how to navigate the United States of America. Not everybody's welcoming, but we need to make it happen. I think as an immigrant, you need to stay afloat, you need to fight, you need to find your way, and as you maneuver that way, you'll start finding communities. And that's a value that everybody has we can participate with community. So being an immigrant is not easy, it's very difficult, it's fearful. There is always that stress, there's always that anxiety, even if you're documented after a while, because it does take a while, it takes many years. And it's almost impossible at times to get these papers called legality. But at the same time, how do we fight the good fight? Because that's what it is. How do we learn to love this country? How do we learn to remember and reminisce what we left? You know, those are those tensions that as immigrants we need to constantly fight. But they're inviting because we could get to teach our children and hopefully others that are interested in each other's cultures.
Thank you. That's a good word. And just a reminder that it's not the people that are illegal, it's the systems that are broken. And there's not opportunity to navigate the system. And all of the immigrants that I talked to in my office would do something. They would pay, they would file paperwork, they would get in line if any of those things worked. But our systems are broken. So yes, how do we advocate for a change in systems? Did you want to share?
Well, it's not my own experience, but I see many immigrants identify, many immigrants from my country. Of these 16 millions of inhabitants in Guatemala, 17% migrate to another country. 1.9 million Guatemalans are in United States of America, legal, documented or undocumented. And they came looking for improve their economy and improve the economy of their families they left behind. They send remittances like Jose and his Lolo did, and they send money to their families in Philippines. And it's only 3% of those immigrants who came to family reunion. It's my case, I think. And that's why I don't feel identified with the author, but I know there is a lot of immigrants who pass through those feelings and those fears and that problems.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it just shows that everybody's story, right, is a little different. And also, like, these pathways to immigration that you were talking about are very expensive. And so not only does it take a long time, as you referred to, Edgar, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars to try to adjust your status. And that is if you find someone who actually will do the work for you and not cheat you. And so it's it's almost an impossible system to navigate. So I'm thankful for the people who have, and I'm thankful for the people who advocate for just laws and to help navigate these systems. One of the things that Jose talked about in this book, and you've all kind of referred to, is those family relationships. So what happens to those when you immigrate? Like we said, some immigrant families end up spread across the globe. Some families come together. Does anyone want to share what has immigration done for your family relationships? How have you found your people here? What does that look like?
Okay, I'll go first again. I have never met my maternal grandmother. Neither have my siblings. I mean, she held me when I was a baby, but I don't have any memories of that. I don't really know several of my aunts and uncles. I have a few that are here, but they're more like distant family members, like my great aunts, my great uncles. My great grandma's here, so I'm proud of that, but I don't really know my maternal grandmother. I met my paternal grandmother back in 2018. My both grandparents, my mom's dad and my dad's dad, they were here, undocumented at some point, so I got to meet them. But my grandmother, she got a tourist visa, came and visited us in 2018. 2017 was the first time. And then March of 2018, she passed away. So I wasn't able to go visit her. My parents weren't able to go visit her. My dad wasn't able to go see her. 2 years after that, my paternal grandfather passed away. It was during COVID. So we couldn't go visit them. And then May of 2022, my uncle, my mom's brother, passed away. So to me, it was more heartbreaking seeing my parents not being able to go and just mourn like anybody else, because they didn't have that access of going and seeing their family members before they passed away. I have cousins that I have never met. The only people that I really call family are my brother, sister, and my parents, and then the family that we just created. Like Carrie was saying, like I know Yolanda and Carrie. So I say Yolanda's my aunt. So if anybody ever sees us, she's my aunt. I have several friends. My coworkers have been such a great asset to have. One of them is here. He's awesome. He's not only a great supervisor, but he's also just made me feel like I had more support. My dad's boss, he's always been there for us. He's always like, Ruby, when are you gonna go get your driver's license now that you can? He would tell me to go and get jobs. He would tell me about scholarships because he knew the system. So he was the one to help us succeed with that. With my brother, the same thing. With my sisters. With my sisters now, it's more of like, my parents are like, oh, ask Ruby, because Ruby knows. It's easier for you guys than it was for Ruby, but Ruby kind of has the idea. So we've just created family. But really, the only blood family that I know are my parents and my siblings.
Yeah, I like what you said about creating community and then also having somebody to help you navigate those systems. That's really important.
Yeah, so the book, Jose Antonio Vargas, talks about, the connection of Lolo and Lala, as Sonia mentioned, but the disconnect there. Then he comes and talks about education, teachers, the one's friends, the ones pouring into him. So it creates that hybrid model, right? And then he talks about just the new families that are created. There's an African proverb, it's called Ubuntu. And Ubuntu means it's stronger together. We are stronger together. So Vargas, the author, is talking about the authenticity of relationships that are built upon new relationships formed, education. The value of having teachers, the value of having people that want to embrace the other. The value of having just counselors, just people in our communities that will love and support and try to understand a cultural norm that is different from theirs. And I call that cultural IQ. We need to have cultural awareness. And I think Vargas landed in a good place in California, in San Francisco area, where he was able to be loved and feel the love of others, while the family was not as connected and the grandparents kind of were working so hard. I don't think the grandparents were disconnected from him. I think our parents have to work in order to survive. My mother was a single mom, and my dad bailed on me. So mothers have to fight the fight, right? They have to work long hours, and then they're exhausted, and they don't have anything to give you other than their love and their support, but they don't know anything about education. My mom is a 5th grade dropout, you know? So it's important for educators to pour into others, into society. It's important for peers and mentors. And going back to that word Ubuntu, guys, family is of most important. It's not political. It's family at its best, modeling what family can do for each other, even we're not, like you were mentioning, even when it's not blood, it's family. And that's the value. What Carrie was saying, it's communities. And that's what Vargas did, and that was his support group.
Yeah, that's really good. And he had that community in California, and sometimes in rural areas of Appalachia, we might not be as far formed in community building, especially with immigrants or people who don't look like us. And so it's important, I think, to examine your own circles and your own lives, and how can you include other people in your communities.
Without being territorial, I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes we become territorial. These are my friends, I can't give them up. Guys, you know, yeah, let's not be territorial, let's share the love.
Yeah, well, I have been lucky enough to be able to go back, and lucky enough to actually have my entire family here. My mom passed away back in 2020, but my kids, my two older kids, you could just. My two older kids, grandparents have been in Colombia, and we have been able to take them for them to build a relationship, and that has been a huge blessing for them. My husband had the idea, let's go to Colombia. It would be great for them to meet their grandparents, and we got there, and it was like we have always been together. So it was a great blessing. But their grandfather passed away. We were not able to go to his funeral at that point. And it's just sad, because then you leave, you continue your life here, it's so busy and everything, it's very expensive to go back and forth, the family is 6. And then the next time we go, they will not be there. So it's that void, and probably that closure never really happens because you were not there to be able to say goodbye. And then again, then you're here, and then you meet wonderful people along the way. And I have been here already, like in Boone, for 21 years, so I have been very blessed to know so many families, especially when I was working in Watauga schools that became like my families. I know I have the Escobar, and like Rubi said, like I little feel like I'm her aunt, and like Sharon is my sister, and Carrie is my brother. And I did my DNA test, and it showed that I'm 1% Mexican. I say, it rubs. I mean, it's like, there's proof. So beautiful friends like Aris and Edgar and their family, you know, when I see you, Carrie. So it is just beautiful to see that you can build those family connections, even though we're not blood, but sometimes blood doesn't even mix. So, you know, that has been great. But there's always that void, right? There's always that void, like you were saying, Edgar, like we're not from here, we're not from there, but we become like a third country, and it's hard because I will always be here. I'm talking to you, and you can hear my accent, right? So you obviously know, like, okay, she's not from the United States, right? So then I go back to Colombia, and I have lost my Colombian accent. So they're asking me where I'm from. So I'm like, it is like, what is going on? I'm not from here, I'm not from there. So it's just like, it's easy sometimes to go into like almost like depression mode, because you're like, you lost yourself, right? So it has been like a wonderful journey with so many experiences and like learning experiences that you have to go through. Sometimes you're being accepted, sometimes you are not accepted, and how you navigate the system. And also blending in into the culture, but not losing your essence is essential. So it's a lot to handle as an immigrant, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good. Is that working? That's a good point. Is that working? Okay. That not only do you lose some of your family relationships, you could lose yourself, right, and your own sense of self. Sonia, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I came for good just in February. I have 2 months living here, so that's not my case. And well, we know we the Latinos, we are extremely close to our families. We have these big gatherings almost every weekend. Yeah, and I keep in touch with my siblings and mother every day, chat or talk. And I can travel to my country anytime. My country is as close as California, so I can go visit my mother and my family and friends anytime. I cannot imagine what it will be if I am not allowed to visit my mother, because she's 88 years old. Her birthday was September 6th. So I couldn't be there because the baby was coming, so I cannot go, but I can go anytime.
So yeah, again, just a range of experiences, a range of loss that's really individualized, right? And so everybody's journey and story is so different, but I think we're finding some common themes there. And one of the things that really I started thinking about in this book is, who is an American? What makes an American? So we can look at your papers and see if you're a citizen, right? But what's an American? And I think that it's really interesting that I have some Central American and South Americans, because sometimes those of us in the United States claim American and we forget that there's Americans in this whole hemisphere, right? And so share with us, in your opinion, what makes an American? Do you feel like an American?
Yeah, I like to share that. So my son Lucas, we love soccer. My family, Maya, so we love going to soccer stadiums, right? With my family, my wife, and my little guy. The cool thing about soccer, guys, is that there's flags being raised and represented, you know, and man, that gets you pumped up, because not only are you cheering for your team or whatever, but the atmosphere, the flags flying, the colors, and everybody at one time for 90 minutes, you know, they get together and they represent what it is to be an American. To me, that's the value that we all have, the inheritance, the rich inheritance that we Americans have for each other. Flying our flags, and I think I said, Meredith, that putting it around your neck with the hopes of other people asking about your flags, and with the hopes of us asking about your flag. So there's that intersect, there's that interchange. Those are true ways of finding out, man, you guys are Americans, you know, and you bring sazon, you have flavor, you have style. I've always teased, you know, if you want to take somebody out of their comfort zone, put them in a subway station in New York or Chicago. And so a couple things will happen, right? After you've been cursed out maybe a little bit, but you'll get to hear people's accents. You know, there are different idioms, there are different languages spoken. You'll get to see the different styles, the urban wear, the garb, the way that they dress, and the way they interact, and the smells, you know, the sazones, the aromas that we all carry. That will break somebody down immediately. You know why? Because we're removed from our comfort zone, and we're stepping into a place that is full of people, and you can't go anywhere until the next stop. So it'll hopefully with that you get to learn, you know, a representation of the world, you know, and what better than than to do it in a substation in Chicago or New York.
No, I think that's great. Those of us in the majority culture often try to make situations and communities feel comfortable for us, and recognizing that the people coming into those spaces, that we should make them feel comfortable. And it's okay for us to feel awkward. Those of us in the majority culture aren't used to feeling that way, I think, and sometimes quickly turn the conversation or the activity to our own comfort levels. And so maybe just embracing the awkwardness if you're in the majority culture, and letting somebody else kind of, lead in what it looks like. So thank you.
So for me, like I was sharing with you when we were walking here, for being like feeling American, I feel like, which is the weirdest thing, is like I feel more American when I'm in my country. And this is the reason. Look, so I have a dual citizenship, which I just love that Colombia allows that dual citizens. So when I fly to Colombia, I have to use my Colombian passport, right? But I also have to go ahead and complete the little immigration paper that they give you in the plane for you to complete. So there's a question there that says, what is your citizenship, right? So of course, I'm going to Colombia, so I put Colombian. And when I got in front of the immigration agent, he's like, no, you actually have to put American. And that threw me off completely, because I couldn't understand like why. And he's like, well, your Colombian passport don't have a visa. When you get out, when you're gonna leave the country, then you have to use your American passport, right? So it's okay. So I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken to scratch Colombian, because after all, I am Colombian first and foremost. But when I'm here, of course, again, like I say, like with my accent and everything, it's more than obvious that I am Colombian. So when I come back, I come in, with my USA passport. So it's just a mix of feelings, being in Colombia and somebody asked me like where I'm from, because they don't recognize my accent. Because working as a Spanish interpreter for 10 years here, I learned to do a super neutral like accent and words that when I go back to Colombia, I continue using Spanish, so they don't recognize. So it will take me only like a week to start getting into the slang of Colombian and everything, but it's very puzzling. And when I'm here, it's more than obvious that I'm from Colombia. So it's the beauty of it that I feel like I could never deny like my culture, my roots, where I come from. There is a saying that la tierra jala, which is the earth pulls, and that is true. I will always, I have my little flag here that is the Colombian and the U.S., but I always talk about those Colombian roots, because it's who I am. The beauty of the coffee, the smell of the coffee, just when I'm there, like I can't even like tear up, because the beauty of the mountains there, and that's why probably Boone stole my heart, because of the mountains. But everything is so rich when I go there. The fruits, the food, just walking on the streets, being able to share that love and passion with my kids. I know one of them is here. Probably he would not make eye contact with me, Ale. But he loves it there. He loves it, and I was like very apprehensive when we went. I was like, they're gonna love Colombia the way I do, and they actually love it. It's in their blood. So so it's just a beautiful experience also to share that with your family when it's a mixed family. And like Jay is here to my husband, and he's truly like 50% Colombian at this point. He loves it. He loves the music and everything. So I think it's very important that us as immigrants, we don't lose ourselves in just blending into the American culture, but make sure that we keep our culture and our roots alive.
Yeah, thank you. It's holding that tension again, right, between two countries and two cultures, and loving both of them, because I know you love Boone and you love being an American too. And so, yeah, a whole life of that. And I know when you're brought as a child, obviously you're not thinking about that, but I think even coming as an adult, you don't know what you're giving up until you've given it up. And so thanks for sharing that. Ruby, did you want to share?
Yeah. So since I was brought here when I was 1, this is all I really know. But my parents really tried to keep the household like any Mexican family would. So it's like the whole meme, your Mexican mom playing 80s music while she's cleaning at 6 in the morning on a Saturday. That's true. I will say that that's true. It's not like something made up. It's true. My mom would like wake us up and we would clean. Saturdays are for cleaning. So now my Saturdays are for cleaning because that's what I grew up with. Little stuff like that. I don't have an accent when I speak English. I've been told I have a mountain accent. I'm like, I don't have an accent. I don't think I have an accent. I mean, I grew up here, but I don't think I have an accent. And in my Spanish, I don't have an accent either. So working with migrant farm workers, we see Mexicans, Salvadorians, Hondurans, Guatemalans. They all ask me, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Mexico. And they're like, no, you're not. Where are you from? And they're like, oh no, I'm like, I'm from Mexico, guys. And they're like, no, I don't believe you. You don't have an accent when you speak in Spanish. And I'm like, oh, it's because I grew up here. And they're like, oh, that makes more sense. But some of them, they will be like, oh, what part of Mexico? Because you don't have an accent, because every little state of Mexico has a different accent. So growing up, that's like something was fighting with, because I was like, where am I from? Like, I was the only Hispanic in my school, in elementary school. So I didn't have friends that could relate to me. I would like tell my mom like, oh, can I do this? And my mom's like, no. I'm like, why not? Everybody else. And she's like, you're not like every other girl, Ruby. And I'm like, okay. But it was a whole culture that like, that's how my mom was raised. That's our culture. So then as I grew up, I understood it. So I feel more at home and more like just understood when I'm with the migrant farm workers, because they understand me, they know more, and it's just really weird because it's like with work, I'm like, oh, I want to check your blood pressure, guys. And then we have a whole conversation about their favorite food and what they're cooking for dinner. So it's just a whole lot. I feel more comfortable. I love what I do. That's why I still keep on doing it. And I just love like, boom, my dad says that I'm like a 30-year-old lady, 40-year-old lady, because I would much rather be out enjoying nature, crocheting, as he says. That makes me old. But I just kind of developed a sense of who I am on my own, because I feel like I was neither from here nor there. Because there's this song that says you don't, no eres de allá porque no vives allá y no eres aquí porque no tienes papeles, which is basically you're not from wherever you're from because you're not there. You don't exist anymore there, but you don't exist here either. So you're basically like, who am I? So I just kind of was like, oh, I'm just Ruby, I guess. I'm just going to be me and share my story with as many people as I can. That's why I feel kind of more connected with the migrant farm workers, because they have to leave their families to provide for them. I mean, I didn't. My parents did that for us. But it's just understanding their stories I can relate more to than my friend that I grew up with my whole entire life. She doesn't understand that because her whole family lives here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So there's something beautiful but really hard in having to create your own identity, right? Because you're not from here or there. So thanks.
Well, I'm a Guatemalan who came to live here in the United States because I just came 2 months ago. I don't feel like an American yet. I need more time. But my husband and I love the American culture. We have many influence of American culture in our countries. The TV shows, the movies, the brands, everything. And I admire your values and your culture a lot. My daughter, she's an American already. She speaks like American. I will say she doesn't have an accent. And she moved in 2017 when she got married. But she speaks Spanish to her son and speaks Guatemalan Spanish. So he's learning, he's 2 years old, so he's learning to talk both language at the same time because she doesn't want, no, she wants to teach him his origin, yeah, his language, and he has visited Guatemala many times, so yeah, he will be both American and a Guatemalan.
Yeah, thank you. And that's an important point too, is the children of immigrants. I think right now, 1 in 4, I think that's right, in North Carolina have a parent who is a first or second generation immigrant. And so children growing up in these homes have a front row seat and special challenges, but also special blessings and privileges of growing up between 2 cultures and languages. So that's a great point, is the children of immigrants too, and how this affects their lives. So the last thing I want to ask you all that I found really helpful in this book was that Vargas gave us some suggestions or questions to think about. He said, when he decided to disclose his status, he said something about, many of us hold some kind of privilege. It was time for me to risk mine. And I thought that was really interesting, that he considered himself someone of privilege. So he had a lot of people come around him and help him and support him. So I wanted to ask all of you, what advice would you give for people who have privilege, maybe who have power or position? What advice would you give to people who can advocate or help people who maybe don't have those same positions or privileges?
I will say that Americans need to know about the subject. I think the majority doesn't know about immigration law. And I remember in the book, Jose's frustration when the people were saying, get in the line, get the process. There is no line for him. There is no process. And if the American people knows about the rules, they can make proposals for change.
Yeah, no, that's great. Definitely education.
I like to say that I respect this country because it's taught me the value of hard work. It's taught me and it's promoted education for me. I respect the United States of America for being a country that is open in many ways. It hurts me when I see in the news, a lot of these self-promoting things, these accusations, we're all murderers, rapists. We're here to steal jobs. That's not the case. On the contrary, we contribute to this country. Immigrants contribute a lot of money to the Medicare and Social Security pensions. We can learn from each other. The value of learning, I want to quote something because it's just the value of familial love, of family love. As a child, I constantly wrestled with my language and cultural identity. It served me well. I am forever grateful for the privilege of growing up in a Colombian home in Miami that nurtured my roots and celebrated my unique identity. My parents' home was a welcoming refuge for international friends who returned time and time again because Luciano and Atala offered a place of rest, really good Colombian coffee, and the embrace of family. They modeled a life of faith and service and set the bar high as educators, linguists, and ministers of the word. That's just one example of many families, right? Vargas challenged the system, but Vargas had support. God put people in his place at the right time, honestly. And because of that, Vargas, man, God used him. I really believe that, to speak up. How do we do this? By defending each other's rights, by understanding that family is a value. Family is essence to this society. I'm afraid of what's happening to our country, that it's deteriorating in family values. If we can keep that and we can preserve that for years to come, for generations to come, you know what? Community, friendships, and relationships will be formed and will be forged together. Learning from each other. I want to learn from you guys as much as I would like for you learn from me. It's a give and take. It's dame que te doy. Give me and I'll give you. It's not, this is the way. Guys, we know empires that fell because of that. May we just adapt to each other, learn from each other, you know, because at the end of the day, it's one human race, one generation after another. It's family supporting family. And at the end of the day, it's how can we love each other without knowing each other? We need to do that for each other. Model that familial love, friendship love. So I just want to say that, you know, write your story, wear your story, share your story.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. How can we love each other if we don't know each other, right? So we have to know each other first. So how can we step into spaces where we can know each other? I think that's really valuable. Thank you, Edgar.
I'm just going to go off with about my comment that my friend made when I was in 6th grade about Ellis Island. It's not that easy. It really takes a long time as compared to when Ellis Island was actually accepting immigrants. That was 10 times easier than everything now. So it's just like educating yourself and others. I talked to some friends that were also DACA recipients, and they were like, oh, you need to share your story. It's like, well, I'm not ready to share my story. That's a very scary thing. I don't know who's going to accept me, who's not going to accept me, if people are going to treat me differently or not. Because even some of my friends, like, it's not something I just go up to, like, hi, I'm Ruby, I'm a DACA recipient. Like, I don't do that. So one of my friends, he was like, oh, you're a DACA recipient. I was like, yeah. And he was like, I didn't know that. And I was like, I'm not going to just straight up tell you, like, this is what I have to do. It's just conversation comes up, I'm gonna share my story with you. So it's just kind of like accepting and understanding people's boundaries. Some people have gone through trauma and that's why they're here and they don't want to share that story and they're scared. I was scared for a really long time. I've gotten some speeding tickets, I will say that. That's one of the most terrifying things ever. Because with being a DACA recipient, you can't have a certain number of like misdemeanors or something else, or you won't be able to continue being a DACA recipient. So I was like, oh my gosh, what if like I'm just not gonna be taken to jail, I'm gonna be like deported, I was just freaking out. Luckily my brother's a cop, so he educated me a little bit more on that, so that was good. But it's just like understanding people's stories, and being empathetic, really putting yourself in their shoes. When I was 6, I was teaching myself all the school stuff because my parents didn't know. When I was 8, I was teaching my brother. So I was the one helping my parents at the grocery store, interpreting. If my siblings were born here, so they got food stamps, so the social worker would call, my mom wouldn't understand, Ruby, can you like help them? So it's like all that stuff that some people don't understand, especially with like children of first generation immigrants. They had to grow up, and I'm one of those people, so quickly. And some of their stuff is just really hard in that they're not ready to like share that story. But it's just being empathetic and understanding why they have to do certain stuff a certain way and why they're worried about, you know, a speeding ticket, why they're panicking about certain stuff. It's just like the education and understanding. It's not an easy process to go through to get your citizenship or your residency or even to become a DACA recipient. It takes so much and it's so expensive for 2 years. And I'm just like, that's crazy. So it's just understanding and educating yourself on it.
Yes, thank you. And you are always renewing. If you have some type of status aside from citizenship, you're always renewing, and you're paying every time you renew. And fees just went up April 1st with USCIS. So yes, that's a big deal. And any systems that you have to navigate as an immigrant, are definitely a challenge. So if you can step into that space and help someone navigate a system as simple as school, or what we perceive as simple, right, it is really helpful. Yolanda, I'm sure you have some wisdom for us.
I don't know if about wisdom, but I have always feel like sometimes we can judge people or not like someone just because we don't take the step of faith of getting to know that person. So my advice is, before you even go to learn about immigration, is go and get to meet some people, immigrants like us, and talk to us about their journey. Sometimes the unknown is what creates fear, and once you get to know the person, your mindset can start to change. Again, if there is, trust me, if there was a pathway that you can go and fill up an application, like a lot of people says, go and fill up your application, we will all go ahead and do it. So, but that is not the case. So I challenge you to go and meet and ask questions. I'm very open book. I'm sure everybody here will be happy to share the journey with you guys. Testimonies speak louder than any media that you can turn on. So definitely, for sure, start there and then get educated, because immigration is like a maze, as you know. There's different pathways. There's a lot of roadblocks for so many, and it's not because they don't try. It's because there's not a way. And I have always loved this quote from Julian Castro that says, in the end, the American dream is not a sprint or even a marathon, but a relay. Our families don't always cross the finish line in the span of one generation, but each generation passes on to the next the fruits of their labor. So as immigrants, we all came with this goal and this beauty within us. But we did it because I wanted the best for my next generation, my kids. So see my kids go to that next level is what thrive me as an immigrant. And I am so grateful. I have always said I'm so grateful for the opportunities that this country have given me and my family. I respect this country, I abide by their laws, and I guess I feel very American right now by saying this. But yes, definitely we all did it to better and to give a better opportunity for our families.
Oh, thank you all so much for joining us, for sharing your story, your advice, your encouragement. And I will just leave you with this. Ali Noorani is someone who works in the immigration advocacy space, and he always says that we are afraid of the Maria, Jose, and Mohammed that we don't know, and we love the Maria, Jose, and Mohammed that we do know. And so I would just encourage you to step outside of your comfort zone and meet people who might be different than you are, and you might be surprised at all of the things that you have in common. So thank you for joining us. If you want to give a round of applause for our panelists.
Toward Meredith Pipes, who made this all possible. My name is Marty Mesner, and I'm the Associate Dean in the College of Business. And Meredith told me that I should say something reflecting on the content. So before you get out of here, you're going to have to sit through just a minute or two of me. I am not qualified, a minute or two may be optimistic, but I am not qualified to speak as you all have spoken on immigration. I was born and raised in Brazil, in South America, where the coffee is also delicious. My parents, though, were American, and when I was born in Brazil, they filed a little piece of paper with the consulate in São Paulo that said I was American-born abroad. And so that has carried me through, and I am a natural-born American citizen, so I've not had to deal with immigration issues. But I resonate so much with what so many of you have said about you grow up in a country and then you move to a different country, and being bicultural and or multicultural even in some cases, many nationalities represented. And the immigration debate, I've been following it and involved in it because I was born and raised in Brazil, and international business is my education area, has for so many years revolved around economics. And economics are so important. When we think of Mexico, for example, there was the Bracero program in the 60s where Mexican workers were allowed into the U.S. to do the hard, difficult seasonal work on farms, and then they'd go back at the end of that season. Then the maquiladora agreement came so that the Mexicans no longer were really coming to the U.S., but American firms could set up within 21 kilometers of the border, use cheap Mexican labor to assemble things, and then allow it back into the U.S. duty-free or with a small value-added tax. Then we have NAFTA, where there's supposed to be free trade. So much of the relationship and its impact on immigration has been economic that it is a delight to hear people talking about the human aspect. And that is really where the discussion should have been all along. Families, communities that are broken, and even if you're allowed in, it's temporary and then you're sent back. So it really resonates with me, your comment, that it's not the people that are illegal, it's the systems that are broken. And the systems really are broken, and they get changed all the time, and the rules change already, and the costs go up. It is unconscionable, really, the way that we have failed to deal with immigration, providing legal paths for people to be part of our communities. I think, Rubi, your comment about the ability to put oneself in another person's shoes is so true. I mean, that's how we relate. That's how we understand other people. And those who have been involved in more than one culture exceed on this dimension so much more than those of us who might be monocultural in your ability to see things from another perspective. The fear that I think is prevalent in American society and about what's changing, all these changes going on, and we resist them because we don't know anything other than what we've known for the last 30 years in American society. You don't share those same fears. You have a broader perspective. You've seen that things can be done differently and be even better than the way they are right now. There's so much for us to learn from other cultures that when we focus on building walls to keep others out, we're hurting ourselves in the long run. So thank you. Thank you for the candid conversation. Thanks for sharing your insights. From my experience growing up in Brazil, I would just like to say, and I think maybe, Yolanda, you were the one commenting on this, going into an American consulate abroad, it's terrifying for everyone, even the Americans, who are not fearing what the people on the other side of that teller's window are going to do. They treat us rudely. It's just part of, I think, the culture of the organization, the State Department or whatever. But again, something that it's kind of fun to identify with. Anyway, I'll end with just one comment. I got to teach in Canada for a while. And when they talk about multiculturalism in Canada, they use the analogy of a mosaic, where it's a bunch of little pieces and you put the little pieces together and you create this beautiful work of art. But each little piece retains its own color. In America, we talk about it as a melting pot. You throw the stuff in the pot and you come up with this mishmash. No metaphor or analogy is perfect, but I really think there's value in thinking of us being a more beautiful picture if each one retains some of their identity instead of being expected to conform to this melting pot. So thank you very much. Meredith didn't just leave this to me to say whatever I thought I should say. There are a few other things that I'm supposed to do. If you give me just a moment, we'll get through this list. Thank you, panelists, moderator. Do sign up for next year's shared reading program. So this is part of the Jose Vargas book discussion. Next year, it's going to be a different focus, which I'm unable to identify with as much, but it's with Native Americans. So we have countries within the country, and we still have barriers for integration. So the book for next year is Killers of the Flower Moon, which traces a history of the relationship between Americans and Native Americans in Oklahoma. I guess you can watch the movie if you want to cheat. I hear it's very good. I have not yet been to see it. But there should be a QR code up there that you can follow to sign up for the reading. The Courageous Conversation or Candid Conversation will be on October 23rd at 4 p.m. And we would love to have you come back. I don't know if we'll have Stick Boy 4 p.m. Probably not. We'll have something other than that. Yeah. Well, that's... Yeah, so there will be a chance to have an ethnic kind of experience with the food as well, with traditional favorites from Native Americans. So thank you all very much. It's a pleasure having you here. Look forward to seeing you again next semester. Thank you once again, panel, and I'm done.
And just real briefly, students, there's card scanners on your way out if you're getting credit for participating today. Thank you, everybody.